from the Avengers becoming the most iconic superhero team in movie history, to the Netflix Defenders collapsing the moment they finally shared the screen.
Is that you've got 4 people who've got no interest in being part of a team. And then, so the challenge that, of course, Marco accomplished wonderfully is how do you get those 4 people into a room, and then how do you get them to stay there? And neither of us really want to be there.
These are the most loved versus most hated Marvel groups, starting with the Eternals. This team had everything going for them on paper, a massive cast, Oscar-winning director, billion-dollar Marvel machine behind it. Even the president of Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, called Chloe Zhao's pitch for Eternals the best he'd ever heard. Eternals is a very big, sweeping, multi-millennial spanning story, and she just got it. But the moment they hit the screen, fans realized something was wrong. This wasn't the exciting new god-tier team Marvel promised. It was a group that felt disconnected from the MCU, disconnected from each other, and disconnected from the audience. I think most of the audience felt little to no attachment to any of the characters, that's why people call it boring or worthless. But the biggest issue of it all was that there were just too many characters at once. 10 leads, all introduced in the same movie with gods, mythology, romance, betrayal, cosmic lore. It was too much to care about in 2 hours. Marvel had spent a decade building the Avengers slowly. Eternals tried to speedrun that formula in one sitting. Kumail Nanjiani, who played Kingo in the movie, later admitted on a podcast that he signed on, expecting a long future in the MCU. Multiple films, a video game, maybe even a theme park ride. But when Eternals came out and the reviews tanked, he said it hit him hard.
You know, it was Oscar-winning director, one of the craziest casts when that movie came out, and the reviews weren't good. That was very, very tough for me. And I realized that too much of how I'm evaluating what I want to do is based on the result, what other people think of it.
His reaction is very valid because the cast never got a real chance to shine. Richard Madden and Gemma Chan felt stiff. Angelina Jolie was barely used. Kumail Nanjiani disappeared before the final act. Barry Keoghan and Lauren Ridloff were dropped into a story that never gave them space to matter. Even Kit Harington showed up for a few minutes and vanished just as fast. And let's not forget about that random post-credit scene. But while Eternals never clicked with audiences, the X-Men did the exact opposite and became a team people still refused to let go of. Before the MCU had billion-dollar crossovers and universe-wide hype, the Fox X-Men were already doing it. They were the first live-action Marvel team that felt like a real family. Broken, messy, emotional, but held together by heart.
Give me a chance. I may be able to help you find some answers. How do you know? You're not the only one with gifts.
Where are you going?
Where's he going? He's over there.
What made the X-Men so loved wasn't just the stories, it was the cast. This lineup was stacked with actors who treated the franchise like real drama, not comic book fluff. Hugh Jackman as Wolverine set the gold standard for superhero casting. Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen turned Professor X and Magneto into Shakespeare-level rivals. Famke Janssen, James Marsden, Rebecca Romijn, Halle Berry, Anna Paquin, they carried entire arcs on pure emotion. Even when the scripts weren't perfect, the performances held the franchise together, and audiences connected to the X-Men in a way that was more personal than anything Marvel had done before. This movie really changed the game for superhero movies. The movie and the entire cast was perfect, excellent movie. These weren't gods saving the universe. They were outcasts fighting for a place in it. People saw themselves in them. That's why scenes like Logan holding Jean or young Charles meeting future Charles hit so hard. These actors treated comic book roles with respect long before it was cool.
You guys are entering Star Wars territory with the price of your autographs. So why
I wish it was the price of her paycheck.
And even after 2 decades, the Fox X-Men cast still gets standing ovations at conventions. And now that it has been confirmed several of them will appear in Avengers Doomsday, that nostalgia is exploding all over again. But while the X-Men built one of the strongest fan connections in Marvel history, the Inhumans proved how fast everything can fall apart when the casting, writing, and direction all miss at the same time. Huge expectations were set, then suddenly the movie got downgraded to a TV show, and everything went downhill. When fans finally saw the live-action version, it felt like Marvel had handed off the project to someone who had never actually watched a Marvel movie. The story was bland, the costumes looked unfinished, the CGI was somehow worse than network TV from a decade earlier, And the cast, who could have been great with the right scripts, were left stranded. Serinda Swan, Anson Mount, Ewan Rion, all talented actors forced to deliver emotional scenes in front of sets that look like high school theater props. And if you need proof of how far the Inhumans fell, just look at Black Bolt. Marvel brought him back in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness for what should have been a redemption moment, and Wanda erased him in seconds. And while the Inhumans became the textbook example of how to fumble a team, the next group proved the exact opposite, winning fans over with pure chemistry and a sense of fun Marvel hadn't shown in years. When Marvel first announced the Guardians of the Galaxy, nobody took them seriously. A talking raccoon, a tree that only says 3 words, a WWE wrestler as one of the leads. It sounded like a meme waiting to fail. Instead, it became one of the most beloved groups in the entire Marvel universe, not because they were perfect, but because they were the exact opposite.
Subtle, take it back.
What are you doing?
I'm distracting you big turd blossom.
The Guardians worked because the cast worked. Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Bradley Cooper, Vin Diesel, Karen Gillan, Pom Klementieff. None of them treated this like a paycheck job. They created a found family dynamic on screen and kept that energy off screen too. They joked together, cried together, hyped each other up, and actually felt like a dysfunctional group of misfits trying to get through life one day at a time. This fan commented, "I don't care what anyone says, Guardians movies over Avengers movies." The authenticity is why fans fell in love with them. Every character had a moment that made audiences cry. Every sequel deepened the bond instead of destroying it. And by the time the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 arrived, it didn't feel like the end of a franchise. It felt like saying goodbye to a family you grew up with. James Gunn really took 5 characters no one had ever heard of and made one of the most beloved film trilogies in recent memory. You could feel how much the cast cared. Bautista openly talked about how the role changed his life. Gillen embraced the physical and emotional layers of Nebula. But while the Guardians surprised everyone by becoming Marvel's most lovable misfits, the next live-action team did the exact opposite, starting with hype and ending in pure disappointment. The crazy thing about the Defenders is this: every character worked on their own. Daredevil was a masterpiece. Jessica Jones had one of the best first seasons in superhero TV. Luke Cage brought style, culture, and identity. Iron Fist existed. But when Netflix forced them together as the Defenders, fans realized something fast. A team up only works if the team actually fits together, and these characters never did.
Went to Netflix. We had this incredibly unprecedented idea, which was to do 4 television series all by themselves, so each of them would have their own stories with remarkable casts and great writing, and then it was all going to join together, and Marco Ramirez, our showrunner, had to figure out how to put the puzzle together, and he just sort of said, "Here you go."
The Defenders is a perfect example of a terrible show that people feel like they are supposed to like. The show felt like Marvel trying to copy the Avengers formula without understanding why the Avengers worked.
You sure you want to do this? No, I don't want to, but if I have to. See, where you had to keep your girlfriend secret. We're past that. No, we're not.
Danny, we're all on the same side here.
Doesn't feel like it.
And behind the scenes, the cast didn't exactly seem united either. No big chemistry moments, no hilarious interviews, no press tour synergy, nothing that made the audience feel like these people were a real team. The craziest part, the Defenders didn't just flop, they hurt the reputation of the individual shows. Iron Fist took most of the bullets, but even Luke Cage and Jessica Jones lost steam afterward. Instead of creating hype, the crossover drained momentum. And while the Defenders made people question whether Marvel should even do street-level crossovers, the next team is the total opposite. Fans love them, even though their movies never got it right. And that loyalty is exactly why the Fantastic Four still hold a special place in Marvel history. They are a team fans refuse to give up on. No matter how many times Hollywood stumbled with them, people always believed the next version would finally get it right, because the team itself is that special. The 2005 films weren't masterpieces, but they had something fans instantly connected with: chemistry. Chris Evans owned the room as Johnny Storm. Michael Chiklis gave Ben Grimm real emotional weight behind all the rock makeup. Jessica Alba brought a warmth to Sue the writing didn't fully support. Even Iowan Gruffudd, stiff as Reed Richards, fit the awkward genius role in a way that made the group feel genuine. Then 2015 happened, a reboot so disconnected and joyless that it made people scared Marvel would never get the team right. They tried to give a realistic take on F4, but they shied away from making the movie raw and emotional, and the movie just turned out dull. Not to mention a bunch of production problems in WTV, which completely butchered the second half of the movie, which didn't help.
I am smarter than you.
Now! Alright! It's clobbering time!
better work.
Most franchises die after that, but with the Fantastic Four, fans didn't mock. They refused to let the first family of Marvel fade away, and that's why the 2025 MCU reboot hit the fandom like a shockwave. For the first time ever, a live-action cast looked accurate, natural, and emotionally aligned with what fans have been picturing for decades. Reed finally feels like a real leader instead of a nervous background character. Sue finally feels like the heart of the team, not an accessory. Johnny finally feels like a star, confident, reckless, loud, fun. Ben finally feels like the emotional anchor instead of comic relief. Everything fans begged for in 2005, everything they hoped for in 2015, finally showed up in 2025. And now that Marvel is finally treating the Fantastic Four with the respect fans waited 20 years for, it feels like everything is moving in the right direction. But the Thunderbolts proved the universe can just as quickly swing the other way, because even a major MCU release can fall flat when the lineup feels random. The Thunderbolts were supposed to be Marvel's big Phase 5 shakeup, a darker, messier, anti-hero team that filled the space the Avengers left behind. But from the moment the film hit theaters, it was clear something was off. Instead of excitement, the opening weekend came in way below expectations, marking one of the weakest box office starts Marvel has ever had for a major team movie. Unfortunately, despite it being a good movie, I kind of had a feeling it wasn't going to set the box office on fire. The lineup isn't exactly a box office draw, character-wise. I know the cast is stacked. And then came the decision that pushed fans over the edge: Taskmaster's death. People waited years for Marvel to redeem her after Black Widow flattened her personality, and instead of giving the character a second chance, the film killed her off without payoff. No arc, no closure, just a quick exit that made the audience feel like the movie didn't understand its own potential. We as fans were done dirty by getting a lame imitation Taskmaster. Taskmaster is the most recognizable character from that movie. Immediately killing her off was definitely a choice, but they also made Taskmaster female, so it was clear they didn't really care about the character to begin with. The Thunderbolts showed how a team can fall apart without direction, while the Avengers proved what happens when everything clicks. The Avengers aren't just a Marvel team, they're the most influential superhero lineup ever put on a screen. Before them, superhero movies were scattered, inconsistent, and disconnected. After them, every studio on Earth tried to copy the formula, and failed. Marvel's cinematic universe had an author in Kevin Feige. No other cinematic universe had that.
Until we can close that portal, our priority is containment. Barton, I want you on that roof, eyes on everything, call out patterns and strays. Stark, you got the perimeter. Anything gets more than 3 blocks out, you turn it back or you turn it to ash.
Can you give me a lift?
Right. Better clench up, Legolas.
What made the Avengers truly loved wasn't just the battles or the villains, it was the cast and the insane chemistry that couldn't be manufactured. You felt like these people loved working together. The interviews, the behind-the-scenes clips, the jokes that became memes. Nothing felt forced. They looked like real friends who got lucky enough to save the world together. And on screen, the Avengers gave fans moments they still talk about years later. Cap picking up Mjolnir, Thor arriving in Wakanda, Natasha and Clint fighting over who gets to sacrifice themselves, Tony whispering. These scenes stuck because the cast made them real. They didn't treat the MCU like a paycheck or a gig. They treated it like a legacy, something they wanted to get right for the fans. That's why even now, after new phases, new heroes, and new universes, people still compare every upcoming team to the Avengers. I don't know about y'all, but I feel like Marvel has left a hole in me since Endgame. Tony's not there, Nat's not there, Steve's not there, Loki's not there. It feels like something's missing. And even though Marvel could replace the missing Avengers with younger members, it's not the key Avengers, if you know what I mean. It's never going to be the Avengers again. And that makes me so sad, and I can't manage to accept it. The Avengers weren't just a team, they were a decade-long journey people grew up with. Kids became adults watching them, adults became parents while following them, and everyone remembers exactly where they were during that Endgame portal scene.